It's the Cannon Sports Podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by the head coach of the Servite High School football program, Troy Thomas. Welcome in, everybody, to the Cannon Sports Podcast. Today we are on campus at Servite High School. I'm Phil George, and our guest today, he is the head coach of the Servite High School football program, Coach Troy Thomas. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you. Well, I want to go ahead and start off, have you introduce yourself and talk about your early involvement in football as a championship player in high school and how you got into the coaching profession.
I guess if we're starting back at high school, yeah, we did win my senior year. I was very fortunate to play with a great player in California history, Russell White. He was a state player of the year, and he helped us win a championship, that's for sure, at Crespi High School in 1986. We beat St. John Bosco in Angel Stadium, 49-14. I got to throw that out there because you don't beat Bosco too much anymore. And then, I played in college. I started off at Davis, bounced back to Moorpark College, and then finished at Cal State Northridge. And I got my degree in teaching and just what was I going to do with it, and got into coaching right away.
Now, you have a very distinguished resume that includes several stops in both the high school ranks and the college ranks. You were an assistant coach at Hawaii, a graduate assistant at Fresno State, in addition to several jobs in high school. And one thing that I found interesting, before your first head coaching gig at Crespi, you were quoted as saying how you were at the college level for 4 years, high school level for 5, but your fondest memories were at the high school level. Can you kind of contrast the differences between coaching in those two atmospheres?
It could have been the schools that I went to, but definitely Crespi High School, being an all-boys Catholic school. I think there's a special bond that can occur in those environments. And, when I went to college, we weren't as close at the schools that I was at. I mean, I had close friends, but I think at the high school level, you really develop a strong bond with those guys because you go 4 years and you're kind of doing things off campus all together. And, it was just a great experience in high school. Not that I didn't have fun in college, because I did too.
And obviously some similarities in those two are that you report to an administration, you report to an athletic department and a university or high school administration. The players on your team are going to be in and out in about 4 years' time. So those similarities considered, why do you think that the high school level of football lends itself more to developing those strong relationships?
Well, I mean, the main reason that I got out of college was so that I could spend more time with my family. And, the college game, you're just on the road, 3 to 4 months of the year recruiting. And I think it's even, it's getting crazier now. And so, I'm home every day. I'm at my school every day with these players. I get to spend more time with these guys over the course of a year, as opposed to being at the college level where you're out recruiting the next group of guys, a good majority of the year, at least a third of the year. And so I think it lends to a longer, better relationship with these young men. And that's how I think you build lifelong bonds and you make that connection, with these guys that hopefully will change their life.
Yeah, obviously recruiting is a much more intense factor in the college game than in the high school, but it's certainly a grind in the high school football game as well. And I think that's something that is, a little bit more on the overlooked side of high school, is really how much of a grind recruiting is. Can you kind of take us inside the war room and contrast how recruiting in high school compares to college?
Well, I think in high school, you're really trying to, build relationships through our youth programs. That's how we attract kids. We don't recruit here at Servite. We try to, build a relationship over time. And the other way that we try to attract kids is just run a good program so our parents talk about us. Our kids are talking about us and in their communities, wherever they may be from. The college level, I mean, it's just a whole nother thing. It's craziness, what's going on there. And it is filtering down a little bit, especially in our league and some of the Catholic schools leagues. And we've decided that we're not going to go that route. We're going to try a different way. We'll see how it works out. We were able to make it to the championship last year, but I think it's going to be one of those things where we're going to have a special group of kids, back to back that, puts us in position to compete at this level.
You place a great deal of emphasis in this program on character. And that was one of the things that when you were hired here, so the remarks for the administration were that they wanted to bring in somebody who was obviously going to come in and win football games and win championships, but also maintain the values of the Servite program. What are those values and how do you go about maintaining them?
Well, as a school, we're charged to form faith-filled leaders, and I believe in that. And that's how I run our program. Everything that we do in our program has to go towards that in order for us to be successful as a football coach, an English teacher, whatever we do on campus. And, I think that's the important things that these young men will take, into their lives. Some of them will play football, and I've had some play professional football, not very many. If you add up the total, the percentage is low that makes it to that high of a level. Most of them are going to go out there and do great things in our world. And for me, I coach to those guys more than I do to developing a professional football player. And I think that's the way sports, especially high school sports and youth sports, should be. I think we're getting away from that a little bit, and that's something that, I'm not willing to, sacrifice or bend on. I really believe in that. That's what affected me in my life and helped me get through the tough times, or some of the lessons I learned from my coaches and my experience in high school. And I want to give that back to these young men.
Can you expand on that a little more, that you think we're kind of getting away from that?
I think it's more about me. There's a lot of kids. You just see all the transferring. I think that's a big thing. Hey, this school over here is the hot school this year, so let's go transfer there. Or, there's this stuff going on that, I don't know if I want to get into it or not, but it's going on, and it's in my opinion, young men are being treated as a commodity rather than a person. And I'll never do that. I look back on my experience in high school. My father died when I was younger. My brother was even younger than that. And, we took from our coaches. Our coaches gave us so much, and we're both, I believe, successful because of the coaches that we had and the experience that we had in high school to set us on that path when we needed it most. And I think a lot of these young guys, they need that. In our world today, they need that grounding of, the things that sports can teach.
I assume that throughout your career, you have had players come through your programs who came from a similar upbringing and needed that figure. When you see a player in that same position who needs those things that you needed when you were in high school, do you kind of take them under your wing a little bit more?
I definitely look for opportunities to try to teach life lessons. I charge my coaches to do that. Obviously in a football program, you have 150 kids, and I can't possibly see all of them. I really try to hire good Christian men that are going to try to teach values that are going to help these guys be successful in life. I think when you learn those things, they apply to everything, and you can be a great football player if you apply these types of lessons that we're trying to teach in the football program. We're just using football as our medium to teach those things. And, I do think I have a great staff of men, that uses football for the right reasons.
So whether a player is moving on to play collegiately or in the NFL, or whether they're not going to play a single snap after they leave this program, what are some of those things that are applicable no matter what they choose to do after high school?
Well, the first one that we talk about is just loving your teammates. And, when you love somebody, it's at great cost to yourself. You put others in front of you, and that's a rare thing in today's day. I think that, social media has really made this thing to be about me rather than us and we. And so we really try hard to teach that lesson. And, I think football is the ultimate teacher of that game. We need each other. So that would be number one. We talk about doing your job, and everybody has a job. You got to trust the other man to do his job. Don't try to do his and yours, do yours. Just playing hard. We talk about playing hard in our program, and and playing as hard as you can. And sometimes you play as hard as you can and that doesn't produce anything. But if you keep playing as hard as you can, you might be able to crack into, that upper tier, into the lineup or win a game that maybe you wouldn't have. And I think the last part of our program that we talk about is, being physical when you get there. That's the part about football that we all love and miss is being able to, as a man, be physical. In our world today, we don't have many outlets left for young men to express themselves physically. On the other side of that, we talk about your words mean something, and they can impact just as much as a hit on the field. So how do you talk to your teammates? How do you talk to your coaches? How do you respect your teachers? And you can make an impact on somebody that needs you to say something positive to them today, and you didn't know, and you made a difference in their lives. And that's coaches, players, and it goes both ways. And we actually encourage our parents to kind of live by that code too. Love your teammates, do your job, play as hard as you can, and be physical when you get there.
Are those values that are already to an extent ingrained in players when they arrive here, or that's something that you find that you're having to instill in them more so yourself? And how do they take to it?
Well, I think I'm very lucky here at Servite. I think we attract those type of families because of the school. The school is set up in a way that, if you're going to come to Servite, academically, you're going to be in a really tough program. That we have high standards for how you act and dress. There's a code by which we live by here at Servite. We incorporate God in everything that we do here at Servite. And then, so for me, I get those kids. I'm not just coaching football. And I think in the past, there have been some times where they focus too much on football and not on those things. I believe that one of the strengths and the reasons I fit at Servite is because I believe in those things naturally. Those are the things that have helped me in my life. And so I'm a good fit for Servite because that's what Servite believes in. And I just take that and run with it. And I believe that that's what's made us successful in the football program. Not that we're better players, not that we're bigger, faster, stronger. It's that we play for each other and we do put the team first and all those things I talked about.
You mentioned parents a bit ago and getting and encouraging them to live by those same values as you encourage your players as well. I want to talk about parents a little bit because one of the things that you were quoted as saying when you were hired here for your second go around with Servite, your current tenure, you said that the parents who choose Servite want their kids to be pushed. And I found that interesting because there's, a little bit of there's some negative stereotypes about the parents of athletes. But that seems to indicate that the parents here, they know what their child is signing up for, and they know that nothing is going to be given to them. How do you get the parents and the athletes themselves to buy into that mindset that anything you get, you're going to have to work for?
I think we're really honest about who we are in the process of, trying to attract young men to come to Servite. And that's across the board. That's the admissions team. I think it's all our coaches. It's all the administrators. Everywhere you go on campus, we're saying the same thing. And I think that's why it works is because, if you're a parent that's not looking for that, you recognize that. Or if you don't think that's going to be a good fit for your son, you recognize that and you don't choose Servite. But on the other hand, if you're about that, type of education and that type of upbringing, and you're already instilling that in your son and you just need somebody else to tag team, Servite is a great fit for those types of families. And so, we do get a lot of kids that are highly motivated to be very good in everything that they do, not just in one thing.
All right, let's go ahead and talk some football and get into kind of the path that your career has taken as a coach. We went over a little bit of what your background is. Now, any coach's resume, including yours, will show a variety of different jobs in a variety of different cities and states. And to an outsider, some might think that those moves are all linear. You'll go from an assistant to a coordinator to a head coach at the high school level and then do the same thing at the college or NFL level. But it doesn't necessarily work like that. Your stops in college have been sandwiched in between stops in high school. How do you go about navigating the professional landscape as a coach and really choosing which job is right for your next destination?
Well, I think in my case, I just got into coaching because I was done playing, and figured out that I was decent at it. I got placed right away as a defensive coordinator. My first year, I was coaching in the Santa Ana Bowl against Bruce Rollinson's Mater Dei team, and we got our butt kicked, but I learned a lot. And that was in 1992. Had an opportunity to go to college, and I was on a staff for 3 years, and the staff got let go. But I learned a lot. And then I was kind of in a transition there, looking for a job. Couldn't get a college job, or I got offered a couple, but I didn't want to take them. And went back and coached for my offensive coordinator in high school, Jim Bankert at Westlake High School, for 1 year. And then, I said, I'm going to try to get back into the college game, and had that opportunity at Fresno. I wanted to see which one was the best fit for me, and so that's why I took those moves. And I just think, I kind of fell into a lot of those jobs, and then Crespi came and asked me to be the head coach. So I was about to get married. I needed some, a little more stable, and I think it was the best thing for me at the time. And every move I've made, I think that's, what, for me, I made a decision based upon what was best for my family and where I felt like I could make the biggest impact. Once I became a head coach, I think things really changed for me personally. And also when I had my first kid, I think, I was coaching, I was doing a lot of football early in my career. I was learning a lot of football, but as I started to mature and grow as a person, I saw that football, it's what we're teaching, but really what we're trying to do is so much different than just teach a kid how to tackle or block or throw or teach them some special play. I think there's a lot of people in our world that can do that. But I'm trying to make a difference, and we're trying to make a difference in their life that's going to last a lifetime for them.
You mentioned becoming a head coach as a life-changing experience, just as was the birth of your first child. And my question is, what was it about that first head coaching position that is so comparable that you'd put those two in the same sentence?
Well, I think, and as a younger coach, I was in charge of a position, and I took that real serious. I love my guys, but when I became a head coach, you have to look at a bigger picture. Now you can't. You're not just responsible for that one group. You're responsible for the whole thing, and that goes from freshman to JV to varsity. All your coaches, everything's going to come back to you. So you have to really think about the men that you're going to put in those positions. And I think as a father, same thing. You start thinking about, when you get married, you're thinking about two people. When you have a child, it's three. And, I have 4 kids. And so, you just think on a bigger picture. And instead of just looking at the, your little self, now it's starting to look at, all right, who are the people that are going to be influencing, my kids, and how do I want them to, interact with my kids in sports. And I really think that helped me, to look at it differently. This is not about, it is football, but it's really not about football. It's about a bigger picture and how we can impact these guys.
And then by that same token, how has raising those 4 children helped to make you a better coach?
Oh, because, you see them go through things, and, you try to be a good, parent that you would want as a head coach. I try to stay out of things. I stay off to the side. I don't really talk too much about, their coaching or anything like that. If my kids want to talk to me about it, I try to help them. They know what I do. And there have been a few times where I've tried to help, and my wife will say, to my sons, they'll say, your dad's a football coach, don't you? You should probably listen to him. But I try to stay out of it and let them have their own experience with their own coaches. And I think that's what's great about it, is that you can learn from anybody, and you can learn what to do and what not to do, or how to get through tough situations. Sometimes you don't have great coaches. And I think that can be a valuable lesson for young people, to have to battle through, some of that stuff. And then when you have a great one, you know what it feels like, and you want to be more like that type of leader when you're in that position.
Well, and you had the chance to be both a coach and a father simultaneously over the last couple of years. Your son, Houston, was a running back for the team, and you have another son coming into the program, Maddox. What has been that experience coaching your son Houston for the past few years?
It was definitely interesting. There were times where I really had to, just let his process happen, for him. I didn't try to get overly involved. He's more of an offensive player than a defensive player. So I'm mostly on defense. And, it was a lot of fun to watch him have a lot of success as a senior, but it was a process for him. My next son coming in, same thing. I'm gonna stay out of the offensive side, see how he earns his way. Defensively, it is tough being his dad and his coach, and I think it's tough on him too. But my son, my Houston, the oldest one, he set a standard and he helped us turn this program for sure, along with all the class of 2022 guys. I mean, they took that next step for us to be one of the teams mentioned in that top group.
Talk about the recruiting process and being able to go through that as both a coach and a parent simultaneously. Obviously, coaching for as many years as you have, you've had that experience of going through the recruiting process specifically as a coach. But when it's your kid, how does that change the game?
It is frustrating at times. My son is an undersized football player, and I've just had so many great undersized players over the years. You just want to take these coaches and go, look, this is a great football player. This is a kid that you want in your program. So it was a little frustrating, just like it has been at other times where I've had really good football players that just didn't, meet the height, weight, speed thing. These guys have something in their heart. So he, in my opinion, he was not that highly recruited. He was only kind of recruited by Army and Air Force. He had some other schools, but as far as Division I schools, so it really didn't change that he was my son. It just that I went through the same frustration that I do with my other guys that are a little undersized, and I'm trying to tell these guys. I mean, Mason Graham, in my opinion, who's going to be a great player at Michigan, he was under-recruited. He's the best lineman that I've had in over these years, and I've said, look, you guys need to recruit this kid, and finally they jumped on board this year. But, I've been telling them for 2 years, how special these guys are.
How much are coaches involved in that process? Obviously, the recruiters and the college coaches are going to come and they're going to be interested in who they're interested in. But how actively involved are you in really selling a college program on a kid that you think is maybe a little under-recruited?
Well, I'll if I feel strongly about a young man and his character and his impact on our program, I'm gonna call as many people as I can. I am very involved in the recruiting process for these guys because it's their future, and I know that high school isn't their end all, and if it is, then we're not doing our job at Servite. This should not be the highlight of their lives. I don't want them talking about, winning a Trinity League championship as being the thing. They should want more in their life than that and talk about bigger and better things. So I'm going to push these guys to, go chase those dreams, and I'm going to stand on the table for them.
So as a head coach, you have had 4 or 2 stops, depending on how you look at it. Your first gig was that head coaching position at Crespi. Then you went to Servite, then back to Crespi, then back to Servite. So that first job with Crespi, let's go ahead and start there. The ability to go back and coach at your alma mater, not just that, but your alma mater where you won a championship. How special was that?
It was awesome, for them to think highly enough of me to be the head coach. Crespi is a special place, for me and my brother. It's where we went to high school. And like I said earlier, it had a huge impact. The coaches and the administrators and the teachers there had a huge impact on me and my brother. And so to go back and try to give back to Crespi the things that we got out of there was a special time.
You took over a team that at the time had lost 16 consecutive games, and by the time you left, you had a 34-13 record as the head coach there and a division championship. Now, leading that kind of dramatic turnaround, that's a tall order for any coach, no less one in your very first job as a head coach. What was your approach headed into that role?
Well, I mean, when you first start, you kind of coach how you've been coached, or, you know, the guys you've been around. So, I mean, I look back on that first year and I was like, oh man, I made some mistakes. So sorry to those guys, you know, in 2002 or 2001 right there. I was learning. And, you know, my approach was just to give them everything that I had as far as football, and give them everything that I had as a person. I've learned a ton since then. I think I would do things a lot differently, but, you know, they stuck with me. And, you know, we finally got to a championship. We won 2 league titles at the end. And it was a great experience for Crespi to kind of rejuvenate their program.
What was sweeter, winning one as a coach or as a player?
Oh man, I would say probably as a player. You know, I think, you know, I was out there doing it. As a coach, you know, I'd never I don't believe it is, you know, the players win a championship, and, you know, I say coaches lose them. And so, you know, if we don't do our job, then we can't put them in a position to win one. And so, you know, I look back on my playing and I felt like we won that championship, mostly Russell White. But, you know, as a coaching staff, you know, if we get a group that's special, you know, we just got to put them in position and not screw it up. And, you know, I did have some great players at Crespi.
From there, you moved on to your first tenure at Servite, and that was really the job that put you on the map as one of the brightest coaching stars here in Southern California. From 2005 to 2012, you won 7 league titles, 2 CIF championships, 1 state title, and you were defeating coaches along the way that you had looked up to and learned from and been around your entire career. What was that like to coach amongst that crowd and beat some of them?
Well, as a younger coach, I got to coach against Steve Grady. He's a legend at Loyola High School, and you know, I can say that I've tried to model our program off of his program. You know, his teams never looked like they were that good, and then they'd beat you, and you go, "How does that team beat us?" You know, and they'd beat us 17-13 and 10-7, just great team program. So that was, you know, to beat Coach Grady, you know, that was something special. You know, I've coached against Dave White at Edison, another guy that I look up to. You know, same type of program. You know, his kids played so hard for him. Harry Welch. You know, these are the guys that, you know, get the most out of their players. And they do it year in, year out. You know, some years they don't maybe show it on the record, but you know, they're always going to get the most out of their players. And so, to me, those are the guys that I think are doing a great job year in, year out. And I've tried to model our program off of programs like that.
I want to go back and read those numbers again because they really are incredible. 7 league titles, 2 CIF championships, and a state title. To have, I mean, forever, those will be teams coached by Troy Thomas. Your name is forever attached to those, as are, of course, the players that were on the team. But to have led that stretch of dominance in this league, what does that mean to you as a coach?
Well, really what I hope it means to the Servite community is that it can be done. And we just got to stick to our beliefs. And I think that, you know, if we stay true to who we are and what we do, you know, we're going to attract the right type of kids to come here and help us. You know, hopefully, I don't know if that'll happen again. I mean, that was crazy, but you know, to compete in this league, and I think that we can. I know that we can. We just have to, you know, in my opinion, just believe that we can.
So from there, it was back to Crespi for another few years. And what were the different factors that led to that decision to leave Servite, go back to Crespi on the heels of such a highly successful tenure, to go back to a program that, you know, admittedly has a rich tradition of winning in its own right, but not necessarily to the degree that Servite and the Trinity League have that reputation?
I think the biggest thing is I always have a little soft spot for Crespi because they impacted me at such a crucial time in my life. And, you know, they had come a little bit 3 years prior to that and trying to get me to come back. And I think this time the timing, it was a little bit more right for me to go back. It was a tough decision for sure. And, I love Servite and I feel like I was a great fit then, and I feel like I'm a good fit now. But I just think that, at the time, Crespi, I feel like I owe Crespi a lot, for my success in life and who I am as a man, as a husband, and as a dad, and as a coach. I owe a lot of that to Crespi.
Now, at the time that you departed Crespi for the second time in 2018, your predecessor, Scott Meyer, was still here at Servite, at least for a couple of days. Was coming back to Servite even a thought during those first couple of days after leaving Crespi?
No. I mean, they didn't contact me till, I forget when, but it wasn't, there was definitely some time in there where, I was interviewing on some other jobs. So one job in the Trinity League as an assistant, and definitely looking to find my next stop. And then Servite called me and asked me if I'd be interested in coming back, and I said, heck yeah, man. I've had a lot of great experiences, great people here at Servite, and if anything, Servite's only gotten better.
And how about the rest of the Trinity League? How had the league evolved in its competitive nature during that time that you were away from it?
Well, we saw a little bit as, I left the first time. You saw, Bosco, making a little bit of a rise there in 2012. And then obviously just watching it from afar, Mater Dei and Bosco really going to a whole nother level as far as like the amount of talent that they had in one program. That's the biggest difference. I'm really hopeful that the league will balance out like it used to be more. When we were winning championships, I think 3 or 4 of those years, it was 3 teams that were tied at the top. It was, we're all 4-1 beating each other. And I think that's better. We did win, I think 3 outright, where we were 5-0, but the games we were winning, they were close. They weren't like the games are now, where there's 2 at the top and kind of everybody else battling for third place. So, I hope parents and kids can see that, look, there's other good coaches in this league and other good programs and definitely other good schools.
You and the Servite football program have certainly done your part in helping to establish that parity that you are hoping to see in the future. The 2021 season last year, it was the first time since 2015 that Mater Dei and St. John Bosco did not play for the Division I title, and that's because you guys defeated Bosco 40-21 in the semifinals. Now, despite ultimately falling to Mater Dei in the finals, how big of an achievement was it to break that hold that those 2 teams had for that long of a time?
Well, if you see those 2 teams, it was a really big accomplishment. They're definitely ahead of everybody else. Anytime you can beat those guys right now, I think you've done something. And it's a tribute to our kids. We had a ton of guys playing both ways. Just that those guys will go down as Servite legends. Ultimately we didn't get it done in the championship, but that's a tough gauntlet. I don't know if anybody else has had to play Mater Dei twice and Bosco twice in the same season. It's like playing the old Long Beach Poly program like 4 times in a year or something like that. It's just tough. But I think it was a great accomplishment for Servite, and hopefully it proves that, the other schools, the other programs, that we can do it. I think we're the first one to do it in a long time.
Well, what kind of statement does that say to the rest of the league that this team, this program is not going away?
Yeah, I think all the programs are, heading in the right direction. And again, I think that's better. I think it's better when it's more up in the air year to year. Which program's going to win the Trinity League championship. I think that it'll be great if we can kind of level this thing out.
Let's go ahead and talk about this current team. We were talking a little bit before the show about how it's on the younger side. You guys have had a few key departures in the offseason, including your quarterback Noah Fafita and your star wide receiver Teteroa McMillan. They're both going off to Arizona along with a few of your other players. Now, while none of those guys are truly replaceable, how do you get your team into that next man up mindset to ensure success no matter who's on the field or what class they're in?
Well, it's definitely going to be a fun year for me because I think we have to, we're really going to have to coach this year. We had those guys basically starting for 3 years. A lot of those guys were 3-year starters in our program, and they were just so smart. They'd been through so much as a group. That's what ultimately I believe led them to be able to play for a championship. This group just needs to see themselves that way. As they're just a younger group, kind of like we were 3 years ago with this 2022 class. The biggest difference I think is that the guys that just left, they believed in themselves from the day they walked on this campus. I think we have some talent on this campus right now. My biggest thing is we just got to believe that we are those guys too, and that's part of the process, and that'll be the fun of it this year for me.
You want to give our viewers a little bit of scouting report and tell us some names and faces to watch for the upcoming season?
I think that we're definitely talented in the wide receiver, running back, defensive back, the skill positions. The biggest thing in the Trinity League is you got to compete up front. And so, just like always, we're going to have a lot of guys that are going to have to play both ways. We don't carry, 9, 10 defensive linemen. It's more like we carry 9, 10, offense and defensive linemen, and those guys are having to play, which I think is still a good way. It's more of an old school way. It's the way that football, was played in the past. And I think that those guys, a great example of that would be Mason Graham. He's at Michigan right now, and they're loving him. They're saying he's a steal of the class. And I've had guys over the years, a ton of them, Troy Nicholas here at Servite, Sione Fuop, he played both ways at Crespi for me. These guys made it to the NFL. And I just believe that, you put yourself in tough situations, you're forced to grow. And, Servite, it's we're never going to walk out on the field and be the biggest, fastest, the number one team going in. But, we're going to give everybody our best shot.
If this team makes it back to that championship game, what will be the biggest reasons why you got there?
I think it'll be our culture. I think that's what we stand on is just, day to day, week by week, month by month, year by year, we're going to put the work in. And I think over time, if you do that, things add up. And, they add up slowly, and that's okay. I think in our world, everybody wants it quick. And I think that what we're trying to prove is that there is a longer plan, and it may not happen for some of these guys in high school. Their best years may be beyond, and I hope they are. For us, we're just trying to stack those days and months and years so that, they've put a great base together so that they could peak higher and at a later time. And I think that's something that Servite does a great job of.
It was recently announced that the 2022 Division I title game is going to be played at the Rose Bowl, and that's the first time in 78 years that it's going to be held at that venue. How much extra motivation does that provide, given just the historic nature of where the game's going to be played?
Well, I think it's awesome. I would have loved to play there. Obviously, just there's a ton of motivation for these young guys. It's their time, it's their turn, to try to go for that thing. And, it won't change me at all. I'm just going to do what I do. I don't know how much it'll change them. I think these kids they're all out there trying to win a championship and work as hard as they can.
Yeah, I'd also imagine, though, that given that, as we've talked about, a lot of these guys aren't going to play on Saturdays and Sundays in the future. They're not necessarily going to get a chance to compete for a Pac-12 championship and play in the Rose Bowl against Ohio State. So to have the ability to do that, at least once or twice while a member of the Servite program, how special is that for them, and how much do they want to get to that big stage?
Yeah, no doubt. To play on that in that championship game is a special thing. You want to win it when you get there. That's going to be a thorn in our side for a while. We've gotten there, 3 times in the 11 years that I've been, 12 years, but 11 where there was playoffs. We've been there 3 times, and we've won it twice. So that one loss is going to stick in my side a little bit for sure for a while.
Another aspect of this team that I want to talk about is the brotherhood aspect. Talking specifically about a couple of the players who have now departed, Noah and T-Mac. When Noah Fafita was recruited here, he helped attract Teteroa McMillan and a few others to the program, and that was based off character, work ethic, as well as talent, what they did on the field. With football being played now year-round and at all ages, so much of the top talent, they've been friends and teammates since high school. How do those relationships factor into the recruiting game?
Well, there's no doubt. I think a lot of the receiver or skill kids, they'll follow a quarterback, and so we were very, very lucky to get Noah, at Servite. His uncle, Manoa Paono, he was a coach for me at Crespi High School, and then he was able to come down and be a coach at Servite High School. So if we didn't have that connection, I don't know that Noah would have been here. And if Noah didn't come here, Teteroa definitely wouldn't have been here. I mean, we were very fortunate to have that connection, and there were some guys in that that came with that group. I also had the opportunity to coach my son in an all-star game in 8th grade. And so we got a couple other kids, Mason Graham came out of that group, and Zion Sims, who's going to West Point. We were fortunate. And that's kind of how you have to do it nowadays, is you have to build a relationship, with different people that can help you, push kids or at least say, hey, go check out Servite or go check out one of these other schools. There's a good coach and a good program over there.
Well, it translates to wins as well. One of the things that Noah was quoted as saying is, if you go with your boys, if you go with your friends, you can really turn around a program. Those are his words and also his actions. That's really what that group did. So how does having players that are that close translate not just to having those relationships, but winning games on the football field?
Well, there's no doubt that those two guys have a special connection. They did play 8th grade together before they came to Servite. And, when you got a guy like that on your team, Teteroa is different. He's a different guy, and as far as an athlete. And so, you always have a shot if you throw the ball up to him, and that's got to feel good as a quarterback. But, beyond that, those two guys are really tight. And they're not the only ones. There were some other guys, Jacob Manu and Aiden Eckenweiler, our two inside backers. Those guys are very, very tight guys. And, I think I've said it before that great linebackers run in pairs, and those two guys were 2-year start. Jacob was a 3-year starter. Aiden was a 2-year starter for us. And, we don't do the things that we do, to hold these guys. I mean, we held a lot of teams to their lowest total last year, and I think a lot of it had to do with our defense, especially those two backers. So, it matters, having that close bond. And those guys loved each other and cared about each other and held each other to a high standard.
We've talked about football. We've talked about values. We've talked about brotherhood. I want to talk about tradition. Coach Thomas, what is the hut drill?
Well, the hut drill was started here by a guy named George Dana, a legendary coach here at Servite. And I actually got to meet him. He came by and evaluated the hut drill. The hut drill is a series of movements that are based on a cadence said by most of the time a quarterback, but it's usually a leader. And then the numbers are called, by another leader. So this year it was called by Jacob Manu and Houston Thomas. And then it's a great honor to call the hut drill. And so we've been practicing all spring, the hut drill. We practice it in the summer, and, we talk about it, that there's going to be alumni in the stands that are going to see it. And what are they going to say about your hut drill? And, is it honoring them in the past? And, that's something that I take personal, because I believe in tradition. I believe that it's important to remember that, the guys in the past, they set this program up for you to be successful and for you guys to live up to a standard of how we play and how we do things.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to say. Obviously, the game changes from year to year and evolves, but as long as you're linking back to those traditions of, even as far back as the 60s and 70s and keeping those alive, how much of a value is that to have that link to the past in your program?
I mean, I love it. I think that it's an honoring of the guys of the past, that we haven't forgot about you and that we're going to do these things that you did. One of the things that, some of the programs had some traditions and they stopped. Like we have a tradition that you shave your head before you come into camp. We all do it together, and I usually do it with them. I think it's important. Some kids may choose not to come to Servite because they have to cut their hair. We've had guys that have had very long hair come in here and cut their hair and end up leaving here and say that's the best tradition, which I was shocked at. That's a tradition that we should keep the most. And I think, those things that are hard for us to do and to give up, end up meaning a lot to us in the end. And we don't understand those things when we're young, especially, when we're 14, 15 years old and we think that, maybe our hair is that important. But I love that stuff because I think it really shows that you are connecting to the past.
Well, and that also specifically the cutting of the hair, that sounds very military, sounds very, stripping you of an aspect of your individuality to build you back up as a unit, as a team. Is that kind of the mindset there?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure why they did it initially, but, all of us roll into camp together and we're going to try to become one team, and I do think that it's very important for us to, use that as a symbol because they've done it in the past and to honor those guys that made that same sacrifice. For me, it doesn't matter, to cut my hair. I've done it so many times, but for a guy that's never done it, I appreciate I remember the first time I cut my hair, I was a little nervous about it. What's it going to look like? But, a lot of these guys end up keeping their hair short. They don't realize that it's a lot easier, but I just think it's such an important thing for us to become one program and one team, no matter where we come from or what we look like or how tall or how fast or if we're the best player or the worst player, we're all in this thing together.
And those aren't the only two traditions that Servite football has. When you take the field at home, you come out to a chorus of bagpipes, am I right?
Yeah, that's right.
What was the origin of that?
Well, actually, it started at Crespi. I had a student. He came in and he said, "Coach, I play the bagpipes. I'd like to play."
So you personally started this tradition?
Yeah, it actually started at Crespi. So this was like 2003, maybe 2000. Yeah, somewhere right in there. I said, "All right, well, bring him tomorrow." And I was in a really small office at Crespi, and he came in and he started playing. And man, the hair on my neck stood up. And I said, "All right, you got the gig. Let's go." And it became a tradition there. And I think that walking in, it's a special time. These guys are going to put their bodies on the line for each other. Again, it's. These young men don't get that opportunity in our world today to do that. And, we are going into a tough game. It's going to be a battle with these guys. And I just think it gets them ready. I think they love it. I love it. And that's how it started. And we just brought it to Servite and it stayed.
What's the effect of something like that on home field advantage for your team? I mean, bagpipes may not necessarily be the most intimidating thing in the world, but when you're on the opposing sideline and you see your team and you see a team walk out to something at home and rallying behind something that's uniquely theirs, what effect does that have?
I have no idea because, most of the time we're walking in and we're focused on us. I don't know what they're thinking, I really don't. I know, for us, we really try to just focus on what we're doing and what, that's what we can control. We don't worry about how they're rolling in or what they're doing. So I don't know. Maybe teams are looking at us. Hopefully they are. They're focused on the wrong things. We'll see.
What's the effect of it on your guys coming out to that?
I definitely feel like it's something that they like to do and that does motivate them, right before game time. I think just, those pipes start playing, man, we're close. We're gonna go get after it, for 48 minutes, and we're gonna lay it on the line for each other.
You brought that tradition from Crespi to Servite. Other traditions you inherited, they were around for several decades. Do you find that, are you able to manufacture tradition, or is it something that really has to come up organically? I mean, I know I worked in college athletics for several years and in marketing, and so much of the conversation, well, we need to have tradition. And I would always come back with, well, but it just needs to happen organically, doesn't it? Yeah,
I definitely feel like, we have created a tradition in the weight room here. Obviously the bagpipes, but there was, our camp week that we have where we spend the night here, 3 nights. That was something that was here, but we've kind of modified what they were doing as opposed to what we're doing now. So we've kind of blended both. Pregame mass, we added something to that I had done at a previous school. So I just try to take the best that they have. And there's, to be honest with you, there were some things that I said, look, that stuff doesn't fit in our program, and what we're about. And we have to move on from some of those things. And, I think there's you have to adapt to the times too of what you should do and what, maybe what they were doing in the past. I love all the traditions at Servite and what we do. We pray at the statue before we get on the bus. There's no talking on La Palma. So when we're leaving and coming home on that bus, you do not talk. And it's really an honoring of the school. What I do is I thank God for the opportunity to be at Servite. When I'm either leaving on La Palma or coming home on La Palma, whether we've won or we lost, I'm just very thankful to be here. And that's what I think about. I don't know what the other guys are thinking about, but, in my 12 years here, I've taken a lot of bus rides because we're always on the road. We don't have a home stadium on campus. So, it's a cool tradition that, maybe people on the outside don't even know about.
All right. Before we go, Coach, final thoughts, be it the tradition, be it the championship caliber play on the field, or whatever you want. Tell our viewers why they need to come check out a game here at Servite this year.
Well, I think, to go to a Servite game, you're going to experience a lot of different things. But one thing that you will see on the field is you'll see a group of young men that are going to play really hard for each other. And you see that in our play, how we run to the ball, and I believe how physical we are. I think that you'll be impressed by, our kids standing up to some guys that are bigger than us. And that's a tradition too, where, we've had undersized defensive linemen all these years, and, these little guys just going against these monsters and holding their own. So I think you'll be inspired. I think that you'll see a group of men that hopefully are going to go out in our world and change it for the better. I think Servite football is a special brand of football, and it is different, and it's different on purpose.
All right. Head coach Troy Thomas, want to wish you the best of luck in this upcoming season, and thank you so much for joining us on the Cannon Sports Podcast.
Right on, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, and we will see you next time. Make sure to like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and share the show with your friends, and we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and follow on Instagram at Cannon Sports, TikTok at Cannon Sports Official, and of course, cannonsports.com for all your sporting goods needs.